Alrighty, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight to Tree Specialist 101. My name is Rachel Rensby. I am the Neighborhood Relief Coordinator here at ReForest London. It's just a bunch of fancy words for saying that I run our tree giveaway programs. So if you ever gotten a tree from us, helped out at a tree depot, or just heard about our tree giveaways, that's what I do. I help facilitate all of those giveaways. And so tonight we're going to be talking about all the things you need to know to become a tree specialist here at ReForest London. And then we will, you will do an outdoor hike portion and come to an event, and then you'll be a full specialist. So tonight it's just kind of an overview. And then as you do your hike, you'll learn more. And as you come to an event, you'll learn even more. So I want to start, I assume we're all in London because you want to come and volunteer for ReForest London. But for those of us in London, we'll do a land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging the treaty territory of the Anishinaabe, which is defined within its pre-Confederation treaty, known as the London Township Treaty of 1796. Throughout time, this region has also become the current home to the Haudenosaunee and the London Lenape nations. So we just want to say thank you to the stewards of the land in the past, and that we would like to continue to steward this land together. We also want to give a huge shout out to our lead sponsor, Canada Life. They've been a lead sponsor of ReForest London since 2009. And in addition to their financial support, their corporate leader has also planted trees on their own land and encourages their employees to volunteer to plant trees in the community. So they're a really great sponsor of ours, and they help us a lot as an organization. Also, here's thanks to our sponsors for tonight's event. At Westminster Pond Center, we have ReForest London and Signal Boost, and it's supported by Canada Life and the Ontario Trillium Foundation. So thank you to all of the above for making these training sessions and webinars possible. Really quickly, we have some upcoming Signal Boost webinars to tell you about. They're not all webinars though, that's a lie. September 11th is a full day permaculture event with Wildcraft Permaculture. That's happening on site at ReForest London. It's an in-person session. You can still sign up for that if you're interested on September 11th. You can check out our website on details on how to sign up. We also have eco hikes every Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Kalali Meadows. So those happen every single Wednesday. If you're interested, you can check out more details on our website, or the tourism page from the City of London also has information about the hikes there, cross-promoting. And then following this training to become a full tree specialist, you'll have to do a hike section. And so those hikes are taking place on September 1st and September 15th. From 6 to 8 p.m. is the times of those. And so you will get sent a link on how to sign up for that after your webinar. And we have a special promo code that you'll be using that Shaquille will send you an email as well, so that you can sign up ahead of time for those hikes and secure your slot. All right, so tonight's presentation, we're going to talk about tree specialists, the role, the various tasks and responsibilities at the events, and then some of the logistic information. So how to sign up for our events once you're a tree specialist. We're going to talk about trees in the forest city. We'll talk about Ontario's forest regions, the Carolinian Forest, and what kind of, and we'll talk a little bit about types of trees, and then an overview of some tree ID tools. So we'll just talk really briefly about them, and then we'll educate you a lot more on these ID tools when we're doing our in-person hike. We'll do some on-the-ground tree identification with Dan, our planting program manager, and he is super knowledgeable and he's really great. And then finally, we'll just talk about some tree care. So some important ways in how to take care of your tree, how to select the best conditions, and some general knowledge there. So those things will be really helpful for you to know in general, but also if you're coming out to one of our tree planting events, you'll know all about how to get the tree doing its absolute best. And I'll also just start, I meant to ask earlier on, but if you guys know how to use like the raise hand emoji thing on Zoom, have any of you, show of hands, ever been out to one of ReForest London's events? So a planting event, celebration forest, or tree giveaway? I see Shaquille. Oh, Susan's been out. Awesome. Everyone else, you haven't had the opportunity to go to one of our events yet, that's fine. We'll talk all about the events that we do, and we'll hope to see you out at one of them this fall once to complete your tree specialist training. So we'll get you guys all ready for that. So jumping right in, all about tree specialists. Why become one? So obviously you guys had some interest, you're here tonight, but just to elaborate on it, you will gain extra experience, knowledge, and love of trees through the information that I hope to share with you tonight. You'll have a higher level of engagement at events and other special opportunities. So in the past, and hopefully again in the future, we open up different opportunities for our tree specialists to do. So we'll have like tree specialists 201 and 301 and 401, and we'll kind of elaborate on those, where we'll have special guest speakers come in and teach you more about trees or fertilizer or just general things that the people might be interested in. Sometimes we do urban trees, pruning, things like that. So there's special opportunities that are only available to our core volunteers. And then we also do hike leader training, and we like our hike leaders to be tree specialists already. So if you're ever interested in doing hike leader training, this is the first step to that. So those are some really awesome things that we offer to our tree specialists. And then you'll get additional training for the event. So if you've been out to an event and you've participated, that's great. And anyone can participate. But when you become a tree specialist, you get more opportunities to do more at our events and kind of be a specialized volunteer. So that is exciting. So training and the next steps. So as you can see, there are 5 steps to becoming a tree specialist. The first is ReForest London 101. If you're here tonight, you should have already completed it. If you haven't done ReForest 101, let Shaq know, and Shaquille here, let him know, and he'll be able to send you a link to ReForest London 101, where you can learn a lot about our organization and everything to do with that. I'm not really going to talk much about that tonight. We'll just talk specifically about tree specialist stuff. The next is the in-class session, Tree Specialist 101. You are here right now in it. Third, we have a tree ID and how to plant a tree hike. So you guys come up to the site, we do some tree ID, we teach you how to plant a tree, kind of what things to look for at events, and we'll probably do an in-person soil test. So it's a really fun kind of night of learning and seeing trees. And also you get to come out to Westminster Ponds and get a guided kind of tour hike around the ponds, which is awesome. After that, you will complete an online quiz, and then you will pass that quiz. You have unlimited tries to pass it once it goes out. We just want to see that you know the information that we taught you at these 3 different trainings. And finally, you will attend a planting event or tree giveaway. At that event, once you have attended that, you will become a full-blown tree specialist, and you'll get your shirt. So you get a free t-shirt at the first event that you attend. Next up, we have the roles at events. So I'm going to talk, just to start, I'm going to talk a lot about what it means to be a tree specialist, like what kind of roles you'll do, and about the events. And then as we get into the presentation, a few things that you might have questions about might get answered when you come out and do the hike, and when you come to your first event, it'll also become more clear. But I just want people to know kind of what things to expect when they're coming into it. So roles at events. At our park naturalizations, you will check in with our RFL staff. So that's the first thing you'll do. You'll come on in, you'll check in with the staff person, let them know you're here. Hopefully, after you get your shirt, you'll be wearing your I Dig tree shirts. We ask everyone to wear these shirts at all of our events. If you don't have a shirt though, we have vests available. So we'll just give you like a bright vest so people can tell who you are. Also, when you check in, come with your positive attitude and ready to have fun. The next kind of thing that you'll do at these park naturalization events is to help set up. So setup includes a multitude of different things to get this event rolling and ready for general volunteers to come out and help. So at the park naturalizations, we want to unload trees. We'll be bringing a trailer full of trees. We want to get all of the trees out of that trailer. And then we'll also unload all of the equipment that we might need for the day. So that's the first step. We want to unload everything. And then we'll start setting up like our table, our signage, our tent. So you'll make it assigned to help with one of those tasks. And then part of setting up too is that we'll actually start pre-filling our buckets with mulch. So at our events, every tree gets a full bucket of mulch dumped around it that gets planted. And so we'll be constantly filling those during the day. We'll bring enough buckets for every volunteer to have one typically. And so at the start of the event, you can start pre-filling every bucket so that volunteers, once they're ready to go, can grab a tree, grab a full bucket, and just get to it. We also like to get our tree specialists to help collar the trees ahead of time. So also every tree gets a tree collar on it. It's to prevent mice, rabbits, etc., from nibbling on the bark of the trees. It's really great for protection. And the tree collars have to be cut in a very specific way. We want them to go from the very base of the tree to that first lowest branch on the tree. And so we'll have tree specialists start cutting collars and collaring up all the trees once again, so they're just ready to grab and go and get planted in the ground. In the past, we would have tons of pairs of scissors and have like volunteers just go out and cut their collars as they go. But with COVID-19, in the interest of not trying to share as much tools, we've been trying to have only a couple people collar trees at a time. And actually we found that it works out better because you get a couple people who really know what they're doing and they can collar up all of the trees. So when we do our hike portion and we teach you how to plant a tree, we'll also show you how to collar properly. And part of setting up is to get all of those trees collared ahead of time. And then if time permits, part of setting up can also be placing trees around the site. So you'll come to the site and the program manager, Dan, or one of our other staff will show you kind of where the planting area is. And if you're there early enough and we have some time, you can actually start taking those trees we unloaded and we just put them in a big pile. And you can start kind of placing them out in the site so that volunteers can just walk up and plant them where they are. So we'll teach you once again at the hike all about like the right distancing, where to plant a tree so that you'll be really well equipped to just go out and get those trees right where they got to go on the ground. That is all setting up. Next, you will help with quality control at the event. So this one is so important. And we love having very specialized volunteers that know all about trees and love trees to help with this task. But we want to make sure that all of the trees that we plant at our planting events are planted properly and well. And so as one of our specialized volunteers, we ask that you go around and help us with these quality control checks. So you'll check on all the other general volunteers that come out to the event and make sure they're planting the trees correctly. And then kind of ease them into fixing their mistakes if they aren't planting the trees correctly. So I'm a big fan of the compliment sandwich, all about kind of saying, oh, your tree's looking really straight. I love what you do with the mulch. I just noticed it's like a little shallow, you know? And so try to like see what they're doing well as kind of things they could improve on. And that helps people really respond to it easily. And it's easy as you then giving the feedback. You don't feel awkward about telling them they're doing something wrong. And everyone wants to plant the trees well. No one's going around like intentionally putting the tree too deep or too shallow. So I find volunteers are always really well receptive to the kind of feedback we're going to give them. And these quality checks and quality controls are most important in the first half hour of the event starting. That's when you're going to get people on their first trees to really see what kind of thing they're missing from the instructions and make sure that they correct it right away. So those first 30 minutes, basically all hands on deck, we want to get to each and every other volunteer and make sure that their trees look good. If you're someone who maybe isn't super social, you don't want to talk to volunteers, you can let the program manager know ahead of time, maybe just let them know like, oh, I'd rather do like the mulch or the collaring than kind of help talk to people. And that's okay too. But we do really love and appreciate the support of our tree specialists, also helping us chat with the volunteers and check on their quality. And also at our tree hike, like I said, we'll teach you all about the things to look for quality control. We'll teach you how to plant a tree right and kind of the common mistakes people are making. So you'll be a pro at spotting them for your first event. Another thing that volunteer tree specialists do at our events is help with photos and stories. So we might have, it's like a special assignment. We sometimes have our tree specialists go around and collect photos and testimonials of the volunteers at the event. Staff do this a lot, and sometimes we even have volunteer photographers that will come out and do this. But if you're a tree specialist and you're also someone who's interested in photography, once again, you can let the program manager, Dan, know at the events, hey, I'd love to take photos, and they would be happy to have you go out and take those photos for them. We do a volunteer check-in and a head count. So when volunteers come up, especially with COVID, we have to check in every single volunteer. But even before COVID-19, we check in every volunteer. We want to get their name, their information. We want their email to follow up with them, kind of how they heard about us. So when they come up to the table, we'll check everybody in. And oftentimes a tree specialist can do that. We have a form that makes it really easy to do. You'll teach volunteers about their tree. So on the tree identification hike that you'll do, if you don't already know a lot about trees, you'll learn some of the basics. And when people have questions, you can answer them quite easily about what kind of tree am I planting, or how big will this tree get? People always want to know those things. And if you can't answer a question, you can just direct them to any of the staff that are there that day, and we'd be happy to answer the questions. You want to ensure people are being safe. So safety things to watch for at our event. We always put our shovels into the ground when we are not using them. It's very important. I wish I had a shovel on me, but you can imagine a shovel on the ground. Its little scoop is up. And when you step on that scoop, bloop, hit yourself in the forehead. You Bugs Bunny it. And we don't like to have people doing that. So you want to walk around and make sure people are putting their shovels upright in the ground when they're not using them. And also when we use our pitchforks for the mulch, we scoop with a pitchfork. It can be a little bit dangerous. It has those sharp tines. So we always want to make sure that it gets placed tines down, leaning against the pile. And we want to make sure that no children are using the pitchfork at any time, no one under the age of 12. And then if it's like a rainy or it has been wet in the past and there's some mud around the site, we want to watch for mud so that we can avoid slip, trips, and falls. We'll put some mulch just on top of those muddy spots so people aren't slipping around as much. And then at the end of the event, you will check for any abandoned equipment, kind of do a walk around. You look for the pots from the trees, shovels, leftover collars. And the biggest thing that always gets left out in the grass, I think we lose a pair every single event, try as hard as we may, are scissors. So you want to go through the whole site. We'll kind of canvass the planting area at the end of the day and just see if we can find any leftover equipment. And then we'll take down the tent. We'll collect any of the trees that might be remaining, load it all back up in the trailer, in the truck. And then there you go. That's a tree planting event. And so describing it to you, just so you kind of know what you're getting into, is great. But your first day out at one, you'll shadow a staff member or another tree specialist who already has done the training, and just get a really good feel for what all this looks like. So the first event you come to, you won't be just thrown to the wolves to be doing these things. You'll be shadowing somebody and working with them to learn all of the various roles and responsibilities that you'll have at our park naturalization events. Next up, we have our neighborhood. I think I froze for a minute there. There we go. We have our neighborhood tree giveaways. These were formerly called tree depots. We're kind of changing the name to neighborhood tree giveaway. So if you've heard of our tree depots before, same thing. If you see depot like written anywhere, it means neighborhood tree giveaway. Neighborhood tree giveaway means depot. Same. And so a really important part as a tree specialist in general, but especially at these tree giveaways, is to arrive on time. People are going to show up early and want trees early. And so it's really, really helpful to have our tree specialists there early to help make sure people get in a line properly and keep people organized and start answering questions as we're setting up. When there's just 2 staff people setting up and there's like 10 people already waiting for their trees, it can be a little much, but the more specialists we have to help, the better it is. So it's really, really important to arrive on time for the neighborhood tree giveaways. Also very important to arrive on time for the neighborhood tree depots. The park naturalization, sorry. It's important to arrive on time for park naturalizations too. It's really great to have an extra set of hands to get everything set up and to make the event be really smooth and efficient. And so then next at our tree giveaways, you will help set up. Setup is a little different from the parks. And we kind of have 2 different models that we're working with. So at our tree giveaways, we will be doing a curbside pickup tree giveaway at our office in Westminster Pond Center. And we'll also be doing community tree depots out in the community. And so the pickup ones, people will have pre-ordered their trees online and they're just coming to pick them up. The community ones, people will be coming and picking out their tree the day of at that site that we're at with the trees. So there's a few different kind of steps. I'm going to talk about all of them as if it's a community tree depot, and then if it's curbside and you happen to come to one of those, we'll just fill you in at the site about what's different. But to help set up, first things first, we'll also be bringing trees. So we'll take all the trees out of the trailer at the site, but then we actually organize all of the trees. So we line them all up in lines of trees, and then we put signs on the front. I think I have photos right here just to show you really quickly. It's kind of in the background. You can see how we have this sign that will give you the species information, and then all the trees go behind it. And we like to space them out like this so that people who are picking out a tree can kind of walk through, take a look at the trees, read the signs. So that's the setup for tree depots. So you'll help start getting all of those trees lined up and ready and looking great. And then just finding where I was there. We also have a tent and a table to set up at these events, and then some paperwork that we get people who are picking up trees to sign. So you might be in charge of helping get those clipboards ready with paperwork. The next step is to help each resident pick out and pick up their tree. So at these community tree depots, at times we will have a lineup of people, or if not, it'll just kind of be people coming up and walking up. And so if we have a lineup, you're going to go with a clipboard and go help people kind of pick out their trees, find out what information for their site that they have, and help them choose the best tree. Once again, we'll teach you that. And we also have cheat sheets. I brought one to show you guys. We bring these fun little tree rings to all of our events, and they'll be stocked with all of the trees that we have available for each event for our tree giveaways. So the front has a picture, and then the back has a bunch of information about the tree. So it's really easy to help people pick. We'll also have a main one. I don't have an example of it that showcases like all of the trees with a cheat sheet on sun, soil and moisture. So basically it's really easy to help people choose their trees. Even if you don't know a lot about trees and you don't know every tree, these little tree rings will help you. If they say, oh, I want a small tree, you can go through and it'll be in small, medium, large order, and help them make those decisions. So that's kind of like a core responsibility of tree specialists at our giveaway events. And then you'll help them pick up their tree. So if they're in line and you help them pick out an apple tree, then when they get to the front of the line, you'll go with them to where the apple trees are, say, okay, here they are, yada, yada, yada. And then you'll get them to the table to the other volunteer who will help check them out, basically, of their free tree. And so that brings us to the next role. We have volunteers that will help collect and gather all of the information of the residents. So we do a lot of follow-up with our residents, and we also use the data that we get from them to really measure what kind of impact we're having on the city. So the type of information, we'll collect their name and their email address that we can send them emails about with surveys for tree health. We always ask if they consent to these emails first, of course. And then we also need their address because we register their tree online for them, and we register trees by address. So we'll get that information from them and how they heard about us. And so someone will be at the booth to help collect all that information. We bring a computer and we just like type it really quickly as they come through. We will then give them their take-home information and a collar. So each tree that we give away, we give a tree collar with, and we also give them one of these for their tree. So everyone will get information about their tree to go home with, so they know all about it when they get home. They don't just forget as soon as they leave, like, oh, what did they tell me how big this gets? We send them home with paper about it. And then another huge part about our neighborhood tree giveaways is encouraging and collecting donations. We do ask for donations at our events. We have a couple of pre-written spiels that are effective and reflect the work that we do really well. If you're somebody who's like really uncomfortable with asking for donations though, don't worry, just let myself or another staff member who's running the event know at the start that that's not really what you want to be doing. And then that is a-okay. We typically have staff asking for donations as is because we're much more comfortable with asking for the donations. It's not always the best job for volunteers, but if you're really outgoing and you're interested in doing it, by all means you can. And so, yeah, those are the roles at our tree giveaways. Another thing is that, like I mentioned, helping the residents pick out and pick up their tree. How we actually kind of typically do it is we'll have somebody who maybe knows a lot more about the trees, helping people pick out the trees. And then we'll have kind of tree runners that go and get the tree for them. So we can divide the roles based on what your comfort is. If you know about trees, you can help them pick them. If you don't know a lot, you still want to help, you can help run the trees. And you'll be able to identify which trees are which pretty easily from your training with us. And then you can be at the desk and kind of help collect information from people as well. So that's what the tree specialists do at our giveaways. So once you become a tree specialist, how do you sign up for these events? Easy. We have a website called signup.com. Here it is. You can see it on the slide here. This is signup.com. I just screenshotted it from right now. We have events coming up. So if you're interested and you get out to the hike on the 1st, you can do your first event on the 9th. So that's our Celebration Forest event. So this is signup.com. What will happen is the volunteer coordinator or myself or Dan, the project managers, will send you an email with a link to upcoming events on signup.com. You'll go on and you don't need an account to sign up. You can just hit this sign up button, and sign up online. You do not need an account. We'll just get your name and we'll know who you are. And then we'll contact you via email before the event with details about the event. And we like to contact people either the day before or the morning of if it's an evening event. And these emails will kind of just refresh you like, hey, this event is still on. This is where it's happening. We'll usually send out like a little map with logistics on where to park as a tree specialist if you're driving, and kind of where to meet us. So if it's like a large site, we'll be like, we'll be waiting here with the tent, and we'll send you a nice little map. We will also email and call if there's a cancellation due to weather. So we'll let you know. We'll give it until the hour ahead to call it, our last call. But sometimes we'll make the call a little earlier if it's obviously going to be inclement weather, such as a really bad heat or a thunderstorm. If it's raining, we still plant and we still give away trees in the rain. Bring your rain jacket, bring some hot chocolate. We'll have treats. It'll be fun. So as you finish your quiz and you move into like more being a tree specialist, you'll kind of get a little bit more information about signup.com, but it's quite user friendly. And like I said, we just send you the links and then you can go ahead and sign up online. So that's all about being a tree specialist. The gist of it, at least. You'll see it firsthand when you come out to one of our events as a tree specialist and kind of shadow us. The next thing we're going to discuss is trees in the forest city. So in this section, we're going to talk about, I already kind of said, but we'll talk about like Ontario's forest regions. We'll talk about native trees versus invasive trees, and we'll go over some tree ID tools. So I'll just get right into it here. So the Carolinian Forest. If you may have heard this word before, you may not have, but it is the forest region that we are in here in London, Ontario. And so it's this small little peninsula down here at the bottom of southwestern Ontario, and that's the Carolinian region. It hosts 220 species of plants and 70 different tree species. It has 1%, it's only 1% of Canada's land, but it has 25% of Canada's population and the warmest average annual temperatures in Canada. So some other neat things about the Carolinian region here is that it's only this very small portion of southwestern Ontario, but it extends down and through the states. So in Canada, it's only a small portion of Canada, but it's not by any means a small forest. It's actually quite a large region. We just only have a little bit of it on our side of the border. And part of the reason why it has only 1% of Canada's landmass, but 25% of the population is due to factors like it being on the water. And so back when Canada was first colonized, having access to the waterways is how European settlers got in. But even before we were colonized, a lot of Indigenous populations lived near the lakes because access to clean drinking water, and they too use the lakes for their different trade routes and canoeing and snowshoeing in the winter. So that's why a lot of the population ends up here. And also the Carolinian Forest is the most diverse forest in Canada. So lots of diversity. We have really great fertile soils for growing food. It's been the home of people for a very long time. It's been a popular region to live in. So just for a bigger picture, this is all of Ontario's forest regions here. And you can see the deciduous forest is also the Carolinian, and then just zoomed in so you can really see all of the counties that fall in that Carolinian region there. So it's just all of the blocked off ones are still considered Carolinian forest, and Middlesex, London were like, I think right here, like the Fork in the Thames, is London, Ontario. So we're even near the edge of the Carolinian region. So a little more about London's Carolinian Forest. We have a municipal goal to increase tree and canopy cover in London from 23% to 34% by 2065. It's I don't think it's an ambitious goal, but it's a goal that definitely is going to take work. And so this canopy cover includes street trees, residential trees, park trees, any green belts and ravines. So any and all trees that contribute to tree cover is what will contribute to this canopy cover number of 34%. And this is just an interesting pictures here. You can see how these older regions like Old North have really great canopy cover. When you look at the Sally, you can see all of these trees. And then you see Sunningdale neighborhood, which is a newer build. And you can see that the canopy cover is quite low. So when we think about increasing canopy cover in London, a lot of our target is these newer residential builds that are maybe not having any trees at all on them. And that's where we can really get those canopy cover numbers up. But it's also kind of really sad to see how the newer neighborhoods don't necessarily keep and hold on to those older trees that you'll see in the old neighborhoods. And there's a lot of benefits of trees. So this target number is to help with climate change. It's to help reduce the effects of climate change. It's to help our ecosystem, our environments, our pollinators, but it's also to help us as human beings. There's so many benefits of trees. If you did RFL 101, Rose would have talked all about those great benefits of trees. And if you're more interested, there's some links on our website where you can learn about how great trees really are. So that kind of brings us into some existential talk here. What is a tree? So this is an interesting question. What is a tree? And so is it from its height? Is it a woody plant? Is it a certain girth that makes a tree? Does the number of stems mean it's a tree or not? Is there a scientific classification that trees end up in? Is there a genetic code or a certain species that means it's a tree? The answer to all of these is kind of no. So typically if we did this in person, we would have like an open the floor and we'd talk a lot more about this, but unfortunately we're on Zoom. So you just have to deal with me talking to you about it. But none of those things individually are what really make a tree. And actually, when you look at these three photos, so I use them as like this great example of like, there are three different kind of shapes, sizes, branches, etc. Well, all three of these are different types of dogwoods. So they're the same genus and different species. And so genetically, there's no such thing as a tree, really. It's just the way that we decided to group a set of plants. We said, oh, these are trees. So there's no real definition. Some people might call something a tree. Some people might say it's a shrub. And it's not always quantified by the same thing. It might be due to height. It might be girth. It depends on who you are and what you call a tree. But as an organization, we need a standard to define and know where the cutoffs are for trees. So we basically use this book. I brought a show and tell book as our Bible of what is a tree. So this book is called Trees in Canada by John Laird Farrar. When you come to our hike, we will be using this to go out on our hike and do some tree ID. It's a great book. This book has all of the trees in Canada that are native in the book, some information about them. And then it also has what's called an identification key. And so you can go through and it has like a series of questions that you answer to give you what type of tree it is. So we'll teach you how to use the key in this book. It's our top recommendation. And for our organization, if the tree is in here, we call it a tree. That's what we decided on, and it works really well for us. But like I said, different places will have different definitions of what a tree is. But then also we kind of go back on ourselves here, because if it's in here, it's a tree. And that means that it can be counted towards our Million Tree Challenge for being a tree, and that it can be given away at our tree giveaways, and it's a tree. However, at our park plantings, we use a measure of how big will it be when it's fully grown to decipher if it's a tree or a shrub. So some things that we plant in parks as a shrub, such as these dogwoods, honestly, all of these are considered a shrub for our park plantings because of their size. 2 of these are actually trees. 2 of these, the flowering dogwood and the pagoda dogwood, are by all intents and purposes trees. We just call them shrubs because we go on size for our planting program. So we have 2 different definitions. It's pretty funny. So that's what a tree is. There isn't an answer, but what we call a tree is what's in the book, the Bible, I call it. It's my Bible. From what is a tree, well, then what is a forest? Am I blowing your minds yet? Probably not, but what is a forest? So a forest is a type of terrestrial ecosystem dominated by trees. They typically contain many different types of organisms and many different types of vertical layers. So you'll get your canopy, your understory, a shrub trapping on sapling layer, a ground layer, and then your tree layer. And so there's so many different layers and horizons to a forest. This photo kind of shows it. Okay, like you see the lower canopy layer here. There'd be things even below these flowers. You get some shrubs in back here and your larger trees. But forests also are not always what you consider your standard woodlot. A forest may also include swamps and savannas. So swamps are treed but with standing water 25% of the time. And then a savanna is still tree dominated, but with only about 25 to 35% tree cover. So it's a lower amount than what you'd see in most forests. But the savannas, if you've ever been to the pinery and you know how they're all like really large trees that are spaced out and it's sandy, that's considered a savanna. And it's still a forest. And so just want to talk a little bit about canopy cover versus woodland cover. So I talked about how London has the goal of canopy cover of 34% by 2065. What does that mean? What does that look like? So what's canopy cover? What's woodland cover? We're simply looking at canopy cover for this target. And canopy cover is the percent of ground underneath the tree's crown. And it is any and all trees have canopy cover. A standalone tree, a group planting, a forest, etc. And this includes your canopy cover, includes your woodland cover. So the canopy cover, if you can see my little cursor here, will be this full, like the ground area of the largest part of the tree, basically, is your canopy cover, measured the width. Your woodland cover is the percent of ground covered by woodlands. So these are naturalized tree habitats, and they don't include the cover provided by standalone trees. So to have woodland cover, it's a forest basically, whereas canopy cover can be any tree. So London's forest and woodland cover targets are different than their canopy targets. And if you're interested in this topic, there's more information on it in the London Urban Forestry Strategic Plan. I think it came out 2 years ago. It's like a 3-year plan. I think we're entering year 3 of it for now. And then it also dives into like our 10-year, 25-year, 50-year plans for canopy and woodlots in the city. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about native species. What is a native species and what are non-native and invasive species? So native species are really important for a multitude of reasons. At our planting events, we only plant native species. At our giveaway events, we only give away native species. They're species that naturally occur in our ecosystems. They're suited to the local environment and conditions, and they're connected with other native species in the ecosystem. So native species are species that developed here, are from here, have always been here, will persist to be here since like trees became trees, basically is what we consider a native species. They're really important because, as it mentions, they connect with other native species in the ecosystem. So they know each other. They've grown up together. They've adapted together. The bees that we have like the pollen from the native trees. The birds like the fruits. The trees themselves get along with each other. They're suited to the microclimates and the climates of the region that they're in. They're all around. They're just great. They're ready for here. And that's what we want to continue to plant, to create these very great holistic environments that work together. And non-native species, put them in the yellow here, are species that are introduced to our system from elsewhere, but are not likely to become a threat to native species. So they're safe for landscaping, but we still don't use them in our naturalization projects because we're trying to create native-based woodlots. But people use them in landscaping. They're things that maybe don't spread very well on their own, or don't occupy a lot of space, or that are native plants, native species still kind of interact with. Maybe the birds still eat the food that they produce. So they're not a problem in our ecosystems by any means. They're just not really from here. We avoid them. And then we have invasive species. These are a threat to native species. They're trees that came from somewhere else and have invaded our region. They're a threat to native species and they disrupt local ecosystems. They have no enemies to maintain species levels, and they should be removed when possible. So these trees would be, I'll give you some examples, but they've been brought in from somewhere else and they happen to do well in our climate and our region still, but there's nothing here that eats them or keeps their population in control, or that they work alongside so that they're not overtaking what naturally is existing, which makes it really bad. They can take out a whole stand of a native tree, and then a bird that used that area, or the insects that frequented those trees, no longer have access to it. And instead it's these invasive trees that do nothing for the wildlife species that we already have. They're no bueno. So I'll just kind of go through some examples. I know if you did ReForest London 101, you'll recognize these slides a little bit. I just added a bit more and I'll talk a little bit more about the importance. So I just have some examples here of some native trees. They're very common trees that you'll see with us, although the pawpaw isn't that common, it's quite rare actually, but the rest are common trees. You'll see them all over the city. You'll see them at our restoration projects, and you'll see us giving them away. We have maple trees, tulip trees, oak trees, and the pawpaw tree. They're all great. And as you come, when you do our tree hike, and as you come out to more and more of our events, you'll become better equipped with knowledge about native trees, and you'll start to know who they are, what they are a lot better. You'll start to learn a lot about what native trees grow in our region. These are some non-native trees. As I said, you probably have already seen these in RFL 101. They're used in landscaping. You probably see them all over the place. These Japanese maples, very, very popular lately. The magnolia tree people love. I also threw on the ginkgo biloba tree here. It's very interesting, the ginkgo tree, because it's not technically native to Canada, although there's some conversations in the last handful of years about whether or not we want to start saying it's native to Ontario, because fossil records show that it's been here for a very, very long time. So it's not recently not recently brought in, and it's posed no threat in the time that it's been here. It does well in our local stands. It's a very hardy urban tree, but it doesn't spread extremely well on its own. So it hasn't really taken over any of our ecosystems, but it's good for landscaping. You'll see them as street trees. I think the city used to plant them. I don't know if they still do, but I put it here as a non-native species, but that's really up for debate lately. It's been here for so long. Some people are saying, call it a native species. I'm part of that group because I love them. I think they're a great tree. And then next up are some invasive species here. So the Norway maple, for a while there, and kind of still is a very common landscaping tree, but they're terrible. The tree of heaven, I'm seeing a lot more of these popping up in London lately. They're invasive. And they resprout very, very vigorously. So they kind of send out shoots and keep popping up everywhere. So once you have one, you'll have a bunch. The European buckthorn, when you come on our hike with us, we will teach you much more about the European buckthorn. You'll become a pro at learning to identify it, and you'll learn all about how it's terrible, because Dan hates them. So he'll be sure to tell you about them. I hate them too. They're terrible. They were brought over to North America as hedgerows, and they're so prolific. They're so hard to get rid of, and they do nothing. They have these berries that nothing can eat. They just spread and take up habitat, and nothing eats them. So they suck, to put it lightly. And then I also threw the Manitoba maple on here. And this one's really interesting because it is native to Canada, but it's considered invasive by some people, or just not native to the Carolinian region. But we consider it invasive because it is a threat to our local ecosystems and woodlots. It grows extremely quickly, And it also spreads by sending out those shoots, like I said, with the tree of heaven. So it sends out sprouts and it keeps popping up and popping up. And it spreads so quickly, and it can outcompete native trees for resources and starts full stands. So areas where you'd have a very natural woodlot with a variety of different species, if you get a couple Manitoba maples in there, they'll just come up and suddenly you'll have a full stand of Manitoba maples. And they don't have a lot of great ecosystem benefits either. They don't live very long. Their branches have been known to break off a lot. And they're just really hard to get rid of. So we really don't like them. We remove them when possible. We never give them away. And we encourage other people, if they see them coming up in their yard, especially to not let it keep growing and to get rid of that. All right, I'll talk about some tree ID. And full disclosure, we're going to do a very broad stroke here on tree ID. I just want to teach you about some of the words and the tools so that when you come on our hike, you'll have maybe heard these things before. Then when you come on our hike, we're really going to dive into these topics I'm going to talk about tonight in person. These are skills that are best learned in person on the ground. You want to be looking at the leaves, feeling the bark. There's a very big sensory part of tree identification that I just cannot do justice over Zoom. So I'm just going to go over some of the main components of tree ID, teach you some of the words. And like I said, you'll learn more about these after if you're leaving here being like, I still don't know what that means. Don't worry, we just want to build up a familiarity. So leaves. Leaves are one of the best identification tools on a tree. Some things you want to look at when you're looking at leaves are what shape are they and what color are they? So those ones are kind of easy. And then we get into leaf margins. So a margin refers to the outside shape of the leaf. So you can see like a maple tree has this lobes in its margin, whereas I don't know what type of tree this is, but this leaf has a very smooth shaped margin. And then this oak here kind of has the lobes. And then this one has lobes, but not nearly as deep as that oak tree. So those are some of the differences you'll be looking at in leaf margins. And then you're going to look at veins. There's a few different ways that leaves vein. I tried to find some pictures. I'll show it for you. So you can see the maple tree is called palmately veined. You'll learn more about this. So I'm just throwing words at you, but it means that it has main veins, multiples, and then vein out from there. So you can see how it goes all the way through the leaf. There's different sets of veins. And then there's also not palmately veined. Can't think of the word. Oh my goodness. But when a leaf has one main vein and it all comes out from that one main vein, which you can see on these ones. And then the oak leaf is somewhere in between. So it has one main vein and they come out, but then they kind of, you can't see in this picture, but they kind of come out again from that oak leaf. So you're going to be looking at vein shapes, and those are going to help you tell about what kind of tree it is. And then you'll also be looking at the arrangement. And so the arrangement is probably one of the most important. They're all important, but one of the most important parts about tree identification is leaf arrangement. And so the arrangement is the way that the leaf grows off of the stem. And so there's single leaf arrangements, and then there's compound leaf arrangements. You can see how this is one leaf, and then these would be the compound leaflets. And then this is one leaf and it's just one leaf. So Dan will show you that in person, but that's a really important thing. And then there's also, on top of that type of arrangement, there is how the leaves then grow off of the branch in that arrangement. So if you have single leaves, are they growing opposite of each other? Or are they alternating each other? And then when you have a compound leaf, same thing as those compound leaves, are they growing opposite to compound leaves? Or are they alternating? So you'll learn a lot more about that, and Dan will kind of teach you the ropes on the arrangement. And it's one of the best kind of first pass indicators on what type of tree you're looking at, but I'll let him teach you guys more about it because he really loves it when you meet Dan on the hike. Next up is bark. Bark's another great identification tool, especially in the winter. So leaves are great, but there's not always leaves on the tree. So bark is a really great one. So the things you'll look at a bark, once again, is color. I chose 3 different colored ones here. You can see that this one's like a nice kind of earthy brown. This one's almost gray. And then this one here is like dark. It's kind of gray, kind of black in places. So you'll be looking at color, texture as well. So texture is like, is it smooth? Is it flaky? Is it in planes? Are there deep cracks in it? Are the grooves light? What kind of shape are the cracks making? Are they going down? Are they going across? There's all types of different ways that the bark will grow. Also, sometimes bark has a scent. You can get on in there and smell some bark if you peel off a little bit of it, and it'll help you identify a tree. And then you can also look for sap. So not every tree makes sap and makes sap in the same ways. So sap can be a really good indicator of what kind of tree you're looking at. And then next up, we have the tree form. So this one is kind of like, I personally use the form either as a very first pass or a very last pass. So I'll try to look at the other things first, unless, and then if I still am like unsure or torn between two, I can start to look at the form, which is just how the tree grows and looks when it's a big tree. But then some trees will have very specific forms that if you look at them, you'll know right away, oh, that's a pine tree. Terrible example. So the form also includes like, is it deciduous or coniferous? Are the branches growing all the way down or only near the top? Is it making a full canopy or is it pyramidal? Is it really, really branchy? Are the branches growing out opposite each other or alternating each other? These indicate different types of trees. So those are just, oh, and finally, we have one more thing to look at when you're identifying trees. And that is flowers, cones, nuts, seeds, and other reproductive parts. So are there any of these present on the tree? So I showed some examples. You can have pine cones, acorns, a little flower. You have these black walnut casings here. So are these present? If they are present, what shape are they? What size are they? And what color are they? So those are going to be some really big indicators on your trees. If you have some sort of reproductive part of the tree present, it typically makes identifying it a lot easier. You know, your acorn is going to tell you it's an oak tree right away. And then you just have to figure out what oak based on some of the other things that we talked about. And then also the big thing is that, like I talked about, leaves aren't always going to be there. And so sometimes you'll get the reproductive parts when the leaves aren't there. Sometimes you'll get to see both. So having a bunch of different ways you can identify a tree is really good because then you can do it across all of the seasons. And then you can also look at buds on a tree. I didn't include it here. I don't think you'll do a lot of bud ID with Dan as an intro to tree identification, but if you're interested and as you get more into trees, you'll definitely start to look at some buds and start to learn the differences in buds and how they grow. But that's a further down the road kind of training, I think. And I just want to reiterate, I know I went through these really, really quick. These are things you're going to learn in person on the hike. So I just wanted to throw at you some of the words and things to think about so that you've heard the word before. Maybe you'll remember a little bit about it, like, oh, the margin's the outside of the leaf. And then when you do this ID hike with us, we'll once again teach you all of these. We have some really fun little handouts. We'll get our books ready and we're going to go out on Westminster Ponds and put these tree ID skills to use. So we're going to start being like leaf shape. Well, what does that mean? And then we'll compare different leaves out in the field and show you about how their shapes can differ and how their margins can differ. Are they serrated? Are they smooth? So it's really cool when you get out there, but I just wanted to give you a first pass. If you still feel like you don't know anything about tree ID, don't worry, we'll teach you in person. Oh, and then ignore that slide. I was going to talk a bit about pests and diseases, but I think that we'll probably talk about that in person. If we see any, we'll point them out. And if you're interested, we do kind of more webinars about general tree care, pests and diseases. So if that's a topic you're interested in, keep your eyes peeled for something more to learn about it. Also earlier, I mentioned some climate change and London strategy for canopy cover. And so if you're more interested in climate change and restoration and like those kinds of topics, we're hoping to do some webinars that might educate people a bit more on them. And we've done some in the past, like on our YouTube channel, you might be able to see some of our past webinars that we've done as an organization. So keep your eyes out on the Signal Boost initiative for some more learning opportunities. And also, if you're interested in these things, we try to talk a little bit about climate change and climate change mitigation and restoration work at our planting events. So you'll start to learn a little bit more about those things once you attend an event, if you're interested in those topics. And I didn't talk about them tonight and you really wanted to know, we can dive deeper into those in the future. Alrighty, sip of water. Whew. So I'll just take a breather here. And if you guys are interested, one more time, we can do a little show of hands about who here has planted a tree or has a tree on their property, either or. A show of hands. Me. Yeah. All right, we got 2 of you have planted trees or have trees. Great. So this section will hopefully be a little insightful for you as tree planters and owners. And then also you'll all learn something from it, and it'll really help you become the best tree specialist you can be at events, I hope. Whew. Okay, tree care. The 4 W's of tree care. These are kind of like 4 main things that if you follow these 4 W's, you will have success with your trees. So watering. Watering, now, mind you, we don't water trees as an organization at the parks that we plant. We try to pick trees that are great for the habitat and to plant them really well. Because they're local native species, they should be able to handle the summer droughts and the cold winters. But if you have a tree on your own property and you really want to make sure it succeeds, you should water your tree once a week if the weather is hot and it hasn't rained very much. And especially this is important in the first 2 or 3 years of the tree. While it's still kind of getting used to its new home, going through some transplant shock from being pulled out of a pot in its nice little nursery home to a yard home. So watering's great, but like I said, we don't do it as an organization. We really tried to choose species and put them in the very right place so that they don't need to be watered. Not always the case with your home trees though. So if you want to water at home, you can. Next up is weeding. Why should we weed? Very simple one. It reduces the competition for resources in the ground. You have your tree with all of its roots and the weeds with all of its roots, and they're all pulling stuff out of the ground. And if your roots are really close to the tree, they're going to fight for what kind of nutrients they're getting out of that soil. So we want to make sure we keep weeds away from our tree. Wildlife. This one, you're like, wait, what? Very important for tree care because wildlife loves to eat trees. This picture here shows some mouse damage. Mice, voles, squirrels, all these little critters, they will actually eat tree bark, like under the tree bark. So a tree transports its nutrients via its cambium and phloem from underneath the bark. So underneath the bark is the cambium layer, and it's where the sugars in the tree and the phloem, are being like water and sugars. Let me start that again. The cambium and phloem is where the waters and sugars in your tree are being moved up and down that tree. And so you can imagine it's sugars, tree sugars, like think about maple syrup sap there. It's pretty often sweet. And so especially in the winter, but all the time, young animals will chew under that bark to eat that really sweet layer that's underneath your tree bark. And they especially do when the trees are young because the bark is softer, it's not as matured, and it's really easy for them to chew through. And so we use tree collars and really encourage everyone to use tree collars on their trees to prevent wildlife from chewing the trees. And it's typically good when you get to that, the lower portion, because that's how high up the mice can kind of reach. Sometimes the bunnies can get a little taller than our collars get to, but we try to get them high enough up that we avoid any wildlife eating them. Also, deers like to eat trees, especially when they're budding. Sometimes trees will like the leaves, but the buds and the new leaves that will start to open on trees in the spring, deers love to just like eat those right off. They're a tasty little treat for them. So if you have a deer problem at your own yard, or when you're out at our events, we'll sometimes do this at our tree planting events. We apply a deer repellent to our trees. It's called Scoot with a K. It's a latex paint with a very bitter taste. It has this bittering agent in it. and we paint it like on the tree branches so that when the deers go to take a bite out of it, it tastes disgusting and they stop eating the trees. So at some of our events, you may come out and end up scooting, especially like we typically do this in aftercare, not always during the plantings because there's too much going on. But if you attend a fall aftercare, you may be helping to apply this repellent to the trees to keep things from eating it, especially when we're down by ravines and areas where there's a lot of deer. The last W of the 4 W's of tree care is weed whacking. Don't weed whack around your tree. It's a fast way to kill them. You can see in this picture, somebody just cut right into the tree with their weed whacker. It'll kill your tree. So try to give your tree like a nice wide berth if you're using a weed whacker, and try to use natural methods like stones and mulch to keep the weeds down and the grass down around your tree so that you don't have that temptation to weed right up to it for your nice timed yard. Mulch is really good for keeping that away. Speaking of mulch, look at that segue. Why mulch? Let's talk about mulch. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. We put mulch, we put a full bucket, as you can see in this picture, of mulch around each and every tree that we plant. And so I kind of mentioned just now, a good reason to mulch is because it'll keep the weeds down, so you don't want to mow right up to it for your residential trees. But when we get into our naturalization projects, why are we mulching every tree that we're planting out in the forest? For the same reason, we want to reduce competition from weeds. We want to keep those weeds down, and the mulch does it great. You put some mulch down and you put it down, we put it just thick enough that things can't really pop up through it. It keeps the weeds down for about a year or so. Also, mulch is really great at reducing water evaporation and increasing water retention. So when you plant a tree, we plant a big wide hole. We put the tree in and we put the soil back in. And what ends up happening is that there's like dark soil and it's totally exposed to the sun now. So it's going to dry out faster than it would have with the grass and the canopy cover that was, or just the ground cover that was over it before. So it's really, really great to use the mulch. The mulch is going to stop the sun, the hot sun, from hitting that soil and pulling all the moisture out of it. And it's also going to keep your tree watered better and longer. So instead of the rainwater just going right into the soil and through it, it hits the mulch and the mulch absorbs a lot of that water and then slowly releases it back into the ground. So it actually can help water retention so the trees aren't drying out as fast in a drought. So mulch is like, it's like the superfood of trees. Like, it's so great for your trees. We use it at all of our planting events. And then we encourage people when they get a free tree from us at our giveaways to buy mulch to mulch their own trees. But I am looking into how can I get free mulch for people when they get a free tree. So that might be coming down the pipe. The time to apply mulch is right when you plant the tree, and then top up as needed. Usually annually, especially for the first few years. Like we're saying, it's good to water for the first few years, always good to keep it mulched for the first few years as well. At our park naturalization projects, we go back out the first 2 years after we planted the trees to do aftercare. And in those 2 years, we will we'll take care of the trees and we'll reweed them and reapply that mulch. And we encourage homeowners to do the same. But if you come out to an aftercare event, those are the main tasks. You'll be weeding and applying mulch. All right, right tree, right place. I'm going to talk a little bit about the conditions that we take into consideration when planting a tree. And then we're almost done. I know I've been talking at you guys for so long. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for coming to learn. So right tree, right place. I'm going to talk about these things, and then we'll talk more about them once again when we're on the hike, but I want you to be familiar with them. And these are the factors that we'll take into consideration when deciding on what trees to put into a naturalization project, and as well as when we're helping residents pick out a tree to plant at their home. These are the 3 main factors. So we look at the sun, the soil, and the moisture. So sunlight. There's 3 kind of different types of sunlight that we look at. It's full sun, part sun, or shade. And every tree is going to have a bit of a different preference on if it needs sun, shade. They don't all have a different preference. Every tree will have one of these 3 preferences of sun, full sun, part sun, or shade that they want. And so it's important to know what kind of sun conditions do you have at a site. So I always assess the areas and the conditions and look for things that may obstruct the sun at different times of the day. So if I'm going out to a site or into my yard and I'm thinking, oh, what kind of sun does this get? It's like 10 a.m. I'm standing there. It's kind of shady and I'm behind a tree and the sun's on the other side of the tree. But then I know full noon, it's going to be right above me. And then that place is going to be exposed to sun. So, you know, oh, it's a part shade spot. It was shady when I was here, but it'll be sunny in the afternoon. If you're in an open field and there's nothing around you, you're going to have full sun. If there's a building nearby, you might have part shade depending on where the building is in relation with the sun. And we'll kind of talk about some of that when we're out in the field so we can show you some examples. I can't explain it very well. Like, I guess I could be like, here's my light source and there's a shadow. I'm not going to try. And it's also kind of good to take into consideration the time of year that you're looking. So if it's the spring and you're in a very sunny area, look at the trees around, see if there's any deciduous trees around that are going to leaf out pretty soon that haven't yet, because once they leaf out, they're going to provide way more shade than they did before. So there's a few things you want to think about with sun. The next one is soil. There's 3 main soil types we take into consideration. These are not the only 3 soil types. They're just like the main soil bodies. There's like 12 different types of soil if you get really into it. But we go by, is it clay, is it sand, or is it loam? And loam is like the perfect mix of sand, silt, and clay. It's a gardener's dream. So clay is a little bit difficult. You'll know you'll have clay if it's very compact and it's like modeling clay. If you get it a little bit damp, you can like play with it. In London, because we're in like all of these old basins of the lakes, and we had water kind of settle here, it's a lot of clay in London. Almost all our soils have some degree of clay in them. It can be hard to plant trees in because it drains poorly, and is also kind of hard to work with. And it can get very baked and dry out a bunch in the summer, but get very, very waterlogged in the spring and winter. But it contains a lot of nutrients for plants. So there's a handful of different plants that are quite clay tolerant. They've learned to deal with the compact nature of it because they love all the goods that it has in it. Sandy, think of a beach, that's sand, pure sand. And this type of soil will drain really quickly. So a lot of the nutrients actually just wash right out of it. It's not very nutrient rich, but it drains well and it won't hold on to moisture for too long. So you don't have to worry about your trees getting waterlogged. But a lot of times there's only a handful of trees that really like the sand. If you're planting in quite a sandy area, you're going to want to add organic matter to it. And then loam, it's a mixture that gardeners like. It's dark, it's crumbly, it's going to have microbial life, it's going to support the plants really well. It drains well, but it holds on to enough water and nutrients that it's great for the trees. Those are the 3 main ones. But as you can imagine, you can get into like a sandy clay or a clayey sand, or you can have something that's almost loam, but it's a sandy loam. So you can kind of get into like some different variations on what soil type you have. When you come out to do the hike with us, we'll do an in-person soil sample and we'll pull out what's called the soil texture triangle. And we'll show you how to do a soil sample and how to decipher what type of soil you have based on that sample. We'll do that all in person because it's easier than via Zoom. And then next up is the moisture content of your soil. So is it dry, is it moist, or is it wet? Once again, 3 main conditions that we look for. So the ways that you can kind of tell this is like, look for spots where water may pool, where you see some low spots. Look for the high spots where it might be drier. Are you on a slope? That means it's probably going to be drier and draining well. Are you at the base of a slope? That means it's probably going to be wetter. So you kind of want to really look around and envision how that water is going to be moving in that area to decipher if that spot is wet, dry, or moist. Because you can't always rely on like the day-to-day weather to tell you what the typical conditions are. So you can use what you're seeing in person, but if it's been in a drought for a week, the soil's always going to be dry unless you're in like a swamp. Similarly, if it's been raining for a week, the soil's going to look wet, even if it's typically dry. So you want to think about bigger than what you're seeing the day of. You want to really look at the conditions and how water might be sitting or not sitting in those places. Alrighty, folks. Well, that is all that I had to present to you tonight. Like I said, we're going to dive way into these topics when we do the hike that you sign up for. The hike's the next step in your tree specialist. And so just the next steps here, you're going to want to sign up for this tree specialist hike at the end of this tomorrow, the next day, maybe a few days from now. Shaquille will send you the recording of this webinar, and he'll also send you the link in the promo code, how to sign up ahead of time here for our tree specialist hike. Then after you do the hike and you've attended all of these different trainings, so the RFL 101 and the Tree Specialist 101, we will send you out a quiz. You must then complete this quiz and pass it. You'll have multiple tries. We just want to see that you're learning the information before you come out to event. And then you will attend your first event with us. You'll get your free shirt and you'll learn the ropes in person on how to be the best volunteer you can be, and how to have tons of fun at our events when you come out to an event with us, and you'll shadow one of us. So those are your next steps. So now I will say, thank you. I spoke for a very long time. Thank you everyone for sitting through and listening. And we'll do some questions now. If anyone had any questions for me, some Q&As, if there's anything that people want to ask or want to know. No takers. You can type them in the chat. You can ask me in person. You can turn on your camera. If anyone has any questions, anything they want to know, any topics they'd like for us to talk more about when we do the hike. We have a quiet bunch. Great question. You mentioned that you remove some trees such as the Manitoba Maple. How does that happen? And does ReForest London do that portion? So if we're out at an event, we will try to remove some invasives that are present at the site that we're planting at. Sometimes we just bring like our loppers and we just cut them like a gardening shear basically, but thicker, and we'll just cut them down if they're small enough. We also have what's called a weed wrench. It's a really cool tool that we'll show you when you come to do your hike. That kind of clamps onto the base of a tree, and then you pull it back and it levers the whole tree out of the ground. So we'll use those sometimes too. And we try to remove invasives when we're doing events, but we don't always have the time or resources to. Sometimes we work with the city collaboratively, and the city will do an invasive removal before we do the site. And they'll either hand remove, or sometimes they use a very light amount of herbicide to get rid of certain trees. And then if you have trees on your own yard or property that you want to remove, the weed wrenches I just told you about, we actually rent out, we lend to people for free. You have to put down a deposit, but you get it back when you return the weed wrench. So if you're interested in removing any invasives on your own property, you can borrow a weed wrench for us and remove them yourself. That was a very good question. So a little more on the climate change related workshops. I don't have any information about them right now, but it's a topic we're interested in. And in the past, we've done different workshops about them. And so has London Environmental Network. We cross promote with Len and host our events kind of together. So if you keep your eyes out on our Signal Boost Initiative page on the website, or on Len's webpage as well, and sometimes even Thames Talbot Land Trust, we kind of host all of these different organizations doing these webinars. There, I'm sure we'll have more and different webinars and workshops on climate change coming up down the pipe. I think we've done some in the past, and Shaquille might be able to speak more to this, but there might be some old ones that have been recorded that live on our YouTube page. Maybe. Or if they're not on our YouTube page, we may have recordings, if you're really interested, that we could send to you. I might be lying. Shaquille will be able to answer you better. If you shoot him an email with more information, he can answer it for you. Great. So if that's all the questions that people had, last call, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and throw them up in the chat and I'm happy to answer them. I just want to reiterate that the next step, I've talked about it so much tonight, is our tree specialist hike. And we're so excited to be able to do it in person. There's a limited amount of seats. That's why we have 2 different dates, because we want to make sure that we're keeping safe and able to have good distances while we're out doing this hike together. So the next step is Shaquille will send you an email with the link to sign up to that hike. You'll come out to the hike on the 1st or the 15th, and then you'll attend an event and you'll be a tree specialist. I do want to let people know that we have an event on September 9th through to the 12th called our Celebration Forest. People buy trees in memory or in honor of loved ones, family, friends, etc. And then they get the opportunity to come out and plant those trees that they purchased. For that, we are looking for volunteers. If you make it to the September 1st hike, you'd be perfectly trained up for the 9th. If you don't get the chance to make it to the hike, but that's still something you want to volunteer at, we're open to other people volunteering. You can get more information from that from our volunteer coordinator, Rose, if you email volunteer@reforestlondon.ca. And then I also just want to say we have 2 hike dates picked out in September. If you can't make either of those dates, we're hopeful to do another hike maybe in October before we lose all the leaves. And then we'll do this whole thing again in the spring. So if you're really eager, but you're going to miss the hike, you can still come out to our events. You can still volunteer, and then you can do the hike later on in the season or in the spring, and you'll get your shirt from us then. But you can still come out to some events and learn the ropes at events if the timeline doesn't exactly work for you. And that's everything. So thank you everyone again so much for tuning in today. Thank you, Signal Boost Initiative, for making this training tonight possible. And I know we ended a little early, but I didn't have that much to tell you in 2 hours. We'll do most of it in the hike, which is more fun anyways. And so I'm really excited for you guys to become more involved with ReForest London and to get to meet you guys at our tree giveaways and parks this season.